Welcome to this roundtable on StratNews Global. I'm Ramananda Gupta. Today we are going to be discussing the rapidly evolving situation in the Mideast. And I'll take this opportunity to quickly run you through the panel that we have with us. I'll start from my left. We have Mr. Mr Ranade, member National Security Advisory Board and former National Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat. On his left, we have Dr Waiel Awwad, senior journalist and political analyst specializing in events in the Arab and Middle Eastern nations. And anybody who's familiar with the Foreign Correspondents Club will have seen him there. Then we have Mr. Surya Gangadharan, editor of StratNews Global. Mr. Colonel Rajiv Agrawal, former director of the MPIDSA, New Delhi, former director of military intelligence and director of the Ministry of External Affairs. And on my right, we have Kabir Taneja, Deputy Director and Fellow Middle East with the Strategic Studies Program of the Observer Research Foundation. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us, and I really look forward to a stimulating conversation. Let me start with Mr. Ranade. So, people are very, very sort of interested in what kind of intelligence operations that actually happened vis-a-vis the Hezbollah. You had all those blasts and things like that. The kind of logistics and things that were involved in that and the kind of impact that it has had. If you could quickly just run through, the effort that it took for them to do all this.
Well, firstly, let me just say it was a brilliant operation. I mean, no doubt. And it would have taken a long time for them to build that network because there appears to have been an emphasis on HUMINT, which is how they actually penetrated the Hezbollah network, which is how they penetrated the Hezbollah supply chain and were able to infiltrate their equipment into the Hezbollah upper echelons. So I think it was done very well. At the time they did it, I don't know whether they were thinking of carrying out this operation. Because there is a lot to be gained by having done this and then just listening to all the communications and what the Hezbollah upper echelons were doing. But obviously, after the attack on the 7th of October, they must have had a lot of internal discussion and decided that it's, time has come for two reasons: to decapitate the Hezbollah to the extent possible, and therefore, to that extent, sacrificing the assets who were already in place and as well as their, what they had done, revealing their penetration. And the second, to assuage public opinion and to restore their own credibility and morale. So I think the combination of factors here, which came into play at that time. It, of course, gave a boost also to the Netanyahu government, which at that time was reeling from the shock of what happened there. But if you look at it on a wider scale, I think there is a message there for the intelligence services of many other countries as to the capabilities that the Israelis have demonstrated, the manner in which they were able to infiltrate, and for that you need trained career professionals whom they've used, and the manner they were able to set up dummy companies in third countries to, in fact, source from a fourth country and yet supply it to Hezbollah. So I think there are a number of intricate mechanisms there. One can go into it in detail. But briefly, I would say that it was a very well planned operation. Whether it was meant for this or meant for a longer term, intelligence operation, one can't say. But certainly it has proved its worth now at this point.
Perfect. Dr. Awwad, while this I'm sure has had some impact on the Hezbollah, but when you talk about the Iranians, I think that's a different ballgame altogether. What is your sense of the feel on the ground? I mean, there is one version which says, that the Iranians are cowering under their beds and moving around, and another says that, look, the Iranians are a very different ballgame from the Hezbollah.
Well, I think we have to see from a wider perspective. If you want to discuss the West Asian affairs, you have to go a little bit in the history till you understand the reality, the complexity of the situation. And having said that, I would say that the crisis in the West Asia started with the Israeli occupation of Palestine. which has been divided under the UN Security Council resolution and giving 55% of the actual Palestine to the minority Jew, and 45% was given to the Arab Palestinian territories. And that's the only resolution where Israel recognized, by the way, where they have recognized Israel as a state. Ever since we had the war with Israel, 1948, 1967, 1956, 67, and then 73 war, and then till date. So throughout the history, Israel was expanding at the cost of its neighbor, including the Palestinian in the Gaza Strip, in Syrian Golan, which is occupied, 1967 war, the Sinai Peninsula, and also you had the south of Lebanon. So all this was occupied by Israel, including the West Bank, which was the Jordanian part looking after it. And 1978, where Israel have signed the Camp David agreement with these, they sidelined Egyptian. So the war left with the other fronts, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, of course, still as a peace. They signed it 1992 with Arafat, and then they signed with the 95 with the Arafi, the agreement with Jordan to solve the problem. But when you deny the Palestinian their existence and at the two-state solution, this is what led to this crisis: the aggressions, the expansions, and the occupation. These are the three issues. Now, you may put it under any pretext that there is terrorism, there is a violence, the people don't want us to be there, victimize yourself. But if you look at the map of prior to 1947, which was called Palestine, now it's totally annihilated by the Israelis, and there's nothing left of Palestine. Out of the 45%, they were fighting for 17.5%, and now they're fighting 5.5% of the actual Palestine, which had been denied to them. And Hezbollah came to existence only after Israeli invasion of Lebanon. There was not existed Hezbollah party. And Hezbollah have voted to defend Lebanon and defeat the Israelis and force them to evacuate from the south of Lebanon, except for Sheba Farm, where they have still under occupation. Now, Hezbollah played a major role in creating a deterrence. So that Israel, for the last 17 years after 2006, they never felt that they were able to invade Lebanon again. There was a skirmish, there was an attack, it has been there, UNIFIL is there, everybody knows. But as a major attack on Lebanon never happened. There was a rule of engagement between the two sides, the Israelis and the Hezbollah, that the skirmish 30, 20 kilometers, that was done among them. Now, Iran stepped in when? If you look prior to 1979, Iran and Israel was very friendly. There were two brotherly countries. Even the president of Israel wrote to the American president, telling him that to receive the Shah of Iran because he's a friend of Israel. So you can imagine the kind of relation and coherence between the two, especially with the intelligence apparatus that the CIA and the Mossad were supporting the Iranian Savak, the intelligence apparatus there. So everybody knows how strong that bond was there. But ever since the Iranian Revolution came in 1979, Palestine was given the embassy and Israel embassy was closed. So ever since the American developed the anti-Iranian revolution, because they thought Iran is trying to export their revolution to the Arab world, Islamic revolution, and then remember what happened in the jihadi culture Americans started in Afghanistan. It was at the same time, Sunni Shia. So it created that kind of equilibrium between the two. So Iran found that there is a vacuum in the Arab world where the Arab country left Palestine on its own. So they said they may be taking that tag that they can fight, they can protect Islamic cause. So they kept on supporting what is known as the axis of resistance, which is extended from Iran to Iraq to Syria to Jordan to Palestine to Yemen. So all that axis of resistance was created by the Iranian and supported militarily, logistically, everything was done. Now Israel starts feeling the heat because people say it's a proxy. These are the proxy of Iran. But we say United States proxy is Israel.
Right.
I mean, that's how we see it. Because everything is done on behalf of the American. The expansion, the perpetual provocation for a permanent wars, it is continued. So ever since that time, we continue till date with wars in the region. Why? Because Israel expanding. And if you look at the American president currently, when you listen to Trump saying that Israel is a small country which she need to expand. So, I mean, you can see the expansion in their mindset is with the neighbor. There's nothing there. So if you're having that attitude toward this region, where peace will come. So the Iranian took the advantage, and now after the killing, after the 7th of October, Israel took a full-fledged war on the Palestinian, on genocide in Gaza Strip, you saw it, and in the West Bank is equally destroyed, equally been more than 12,000 been till now detained, more than 650 people killed in West Bank, which you're saying your war is with Gaza, with Hamas. It has. So the war expanded, and the humiliation that Netanyahu is suffering at Hamas' hand in Gaza Strip found that to open another front. So opening the Lebanese front was part of the objective of expanding, because the doctrine of Israel, creation of Israel in the region, is based on three issues. One is the Jewish state, it's only for the Jew. That was a second, to be the dominant power in the region. And the third is the land and the water.
I'll come back to those three.
So I want you to focus, then we can come back later on the discussion.
So you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, this is a generic question for each of you. Is the war at an inflection point? What do each of you expect? Colonel, maybe you can.
So, I mean, the war has just completed 1 year yesterday, and throughout the past few months before, I think 30th July, when the Hania assassination took place, there were indications and there were moves and, meetings taking place somehow to get the ceasefire through. And the real work for ceasefire started in the month of May, and on 2nd July, when the UN Security Council finally, gave its resolution to the ceasefire, there were hopes that somehow, in some manner, whether in a phased manner or otherwise, this could move along that direction, while the attrition warfare could continue in Gaza for some more time. But 30th July, I think, has changed the dynamics of this war, and right now it is at a point where none of the sides is seeking, a ceasefire in the immediate time frame. And just to take it, forward to this war, like Dr. Awwad was mentioning, to me, this war is about the manifestation of fears of both the, parties on the opposing sides. So why do I say that? So for the Palestinians, there was a fear that their cause for a Palestinian state was being lost into oblivion forever. Why? Because Abraham Accords had already taken place, and the Saudi-Israel normalization was on the anvil. On 23rd September, the Crown Prince said that everything is done except for, final papers to be done and signed and all. So, I'm not saying that Hamas did this. It was the overall cause for Palestinians that they would be lost in oblivion if this deal is signed. UAE has already signed it. Saudi Arabia signs it. There's no one left to fight for our cause. For Israel, the fear has always been that they have got enemies on all its borders. And they have been threatened. There's no doubt about it. Israel has been threatened. They have fought continuously episodic conflicts in Gaza, small-scale skirmishes in West Bank, and sporadic rocket attacks from Hezbollah and this thing. But they have always been under threat. So their fear has now manifested into taking this opportunity of this war to, do it once and for all and finish it. And that is what it is manifesting in stage by stage, as Dr. Awwad was saying, that first Gaza, then West Bank, now come to Lebanon. Let us see if everything can be sorted out. If there's no threat on our borders, maybe one fine day, we could live in peace. But, geography is a beast. You can't find a solution around the geography. You have to find the solution with the geography that you are bestowed with. So this is the state it is in.
Yeah, I think I agree with whatever Colonel has said. I think, but also the war has sort of entered a slightly rudderless direction at this point of time, right? It started because of what Hamas did in October last year. Then what the reaction was from the Israeli side. Now, I think Israel has always been prepared for a war with Hezbollah, but they were not prepared for the war with Hamas at that point of time, at least. I think there was some sort of underlying opinion that had taken over in Israel that situation is sort of under control at this point of time. We are not expecting a big tactical movement from Hamas, the way specifically it happened in a spectacular fashion from the Hamas side. And we have to also remember, like, hundreds of people crossed over. Yeah. Right. So I think what for Israel at that point of time, what was an inflection point, was that they were under fear that they might lose forever the idea of being a security state. Right. The idea that they are impenetrable, the idea they are undefeatable, was taken away from them. And I think a lot of the reaction, specifically if you see the kind of might that they have unleashed, whether it's on Gaza, whether it's on southern Lebanon right now, even Beirut now, is I think in some terms to take that back, to take that narrative back that we are actually not defeatable, that you did not defeat us. We are now showing you that what we can do because you took that away from us for a short period of time. Now, but because of that, I think it is slightly rudderless, and why I say that is because all this is military and tactical in nature. The political part is non-existent right now. The diplomacy part is non-existent right now. The Americans have tried and failed. Now, when the world goes out and says, what can India do, or what can China do, what can Russia do? Nothing. If the Americans, who have the largest leverage there, are unable to mobilize it, then unfortunately, no one else can come in and try to save the day. So it has to come from within of what takes place. So right now, I think from a ceasefire perspective, I think Israel has made it very clear what they want to achieve or what they want to do. But tactically, they can degrade, and they have degraded Hamas also till a certain extent. They've degraded Hezbollah also till a certain extent. But the longevity of it, the political longevity of it, what is that going to be? I think that is not even on the table right now. Unless that is on the table, we can't say when will this end or what will be the culmination of this.
Ranade?
Well, I'll just add a couple of points to this. I think he's quite right when he says that you can't see the end at the moment. It seems that it's going to drag on. But having said that, there are two things that I would say that I think Israel, or Netanyahu to be precise, is keeping the options open. I mean, he's sort of, for example, delayed his retaliation vis-a-vis Iran. He's, of course, said it will happen, but when it will happen, what form it will take, is been left up in the air. The second are these persistent reports, confirmed or unconfirmed is another matter, but that, the nuclear assets, or the nuclear program, rather, of Iran is very much in the crosshairs of Israel. Now, that also would have the tacit support of the Americans, because that's a target for them too. So that's, I think, a factor that, Netanyahu is playing on, and I think we need to keep that in mind, that maybe that is one end goal which they have. The second thing is, I think, the trigger, there seems to have been an uneasy kind of peace till now, till the 7th of October. The trigger was this attack, which was heinous. I mean, it was reprehensible what happened. And I think, if you recall, at that time there were reports saying that Netanyahu had some kind of a deal with the Hamas and the others that, we'll pay you something or whatever it is, and you will not hit us. I don't know whether that's true, but it's in the realm of possibility that he had some kind of an arrangement. And so these guys were relaxed. They also thought that, they were impenetrable. They had built up adequate defenses. But one can't understand how come it took them so many hours to respond. But of course, once it's happened, they've hit back now and there's no stopping. But they've not been shy of saying that our end goal is to get Iran. And I think that is, to my mind at least, an indicator that we have not seen the end of this military operation. It might become more bloody, and it might even expand a bit with consequences that, at least I can't anticipate.
Dr. Awwad? Well, I agree about my panelist here. This very important point, which is the expansion attitude that the man have already created in his mindset. Netanyahu read in a book in 1996. He had his vision for this region. He calling it the new Middle East order. And we call it the new Middle East disorder. Because you are not even, the military solution never reached to a stage where you can implement it. No matter how might you use, no matter, right cannot be might. I mean, sorry, might is not right, like vice versa. It's right is might. If you, in the absence of a political comprehensive framework to solve the problem in the Middle East, we are landing up in this mess. And this is why, because America is a partner in the crime against humanity. This is the most coward act, that you using civilian appliances to kill normal public opinion. And all of us know, we live in that region, that none of Hezbollah fighters really use those pagers except this small commanders, not the right, because these are civilian. They are activists. They are active in the public. People are using it. You had people in school. You had driver, bus driver. You had the people in the market. You're using these things to kill? What do you achieve? Or you coming from the sky and bombing? Where do we achieve? That's what I said. It's a perpetual provocation. That is where we are telling the Israel, even the Arab League and the Arab OIC, 57 nations went to the General Assembly in the last meeting, gave Israeli assurances. We wanted to have peace with you. We give the Palestinians the right of existence. But when even the Prime Minister Netanyahu torn the Oslo Agreement and he threw it in the dustbin, and his activists killed Ishaq Rabin, the former Prime Minister of Israel, and he said there is no question of a Palestinian state. So what do you want us to do? The question here, you need to address the issues of the crux of the problem, and there where the problem lies. It's expansions of this war into the front of Syria. You occupied Syria and Golan. Moshe Dayan, he has written in his autobiography that we provoked the Syrian in 1967 war to occupy Golan. For what? 34% of Israeli water come from the Golan. So what mean? That mean what? That means you are securing your own at the cost of the other. Ben Gurion said the Arab want to throw us to the sea. And we, foolishly Arabs, adopted that and we said we want to throw Israel to the sea. Otherwise, if you go by history of Israeli book, it's Ben Gurion who said it wasn't us. But we adopted it and we followed the system. So what I'm trying to say here, we have to differentiate in two aspects, which people are not understanding. Judaism, Jews are Semite like us. We live in the region, they've lived with us, and even the historian tell you in the Arab world that they never had this safe custodian except with the Arabs and the Muslim in the Arab world. Even the Hacham of Israel will tell you, the rabbis. But you have to differentiate between Zionism. Zionist movement which have taken place in 1897 in Basel, the first meeting with Herzl, it was to divide this world and create the state of Israel. So there we need to find out seriously, are these people willing to live with us? The settlers who came from the American, what we call in the right Christian Zionist movement, which have taken occupying these territories and creating this problem. Israel is an intelligent apparatus. I agree, it's a great apparatus. And you know, even a butterfly, if it fly in front of the cameras, there is an automatic gun, shoot it down. And if I know that Israel had control of Hezbollah movement, even if you ask for a pizza in the Dahia or in south of Lebanon, if you ask for a pizza, the Israeli intelligence get the message, who is asking for pizza, how many people sitting here, how many people. So that much of a complexity of the situation make you feel that this is a false flag. It cannot be normal. That's why we ask for the blueprint, come up with the paper, why this Hamas went into this. Did Hamas seriously do this one because the laxity of the Israelis? Let them investigate and find out. There is a heinous, sinister plot which they are not telling us. We in the media and with the Western media have tarnished the image that these are terrorists, they are fighting, they are killing, they are savage. But really, do you go throughout the history, how many people have been killed? I mean, the 750,000 Palestinians in 1948, 560 villages were obliterated by the Israelis and they kicked out Nakba, we call it a catastrophe. Why only Israel want peace and we don't want peace? But he wants peace on his own term. So to survive in power, Netanyahu is having already siphoned $50 million from Qatar money, which given to Hamas. We all know who created Hamas, who funded Hamas. $250 million came to Hamas, 50 million he took. So there is a case against him in Israeli, not with us. Israeli government is already investigating his 50 million gain out of it, beside the other, of course, cases. So as long as you prolong this war, you will have a problem of, you will stay in the power. Otherwise, he will change. Now, with attacking of Hezbollah and killing of the Nasrallah, he is gaining popularity. Yeah. So that ecstasy in him that we can reach by using power came to his mind. But that doesn't reach. You cannot solve any problem by wars. That's my answer. God.
You know, that's another thing that's been striking me, and perhaps we'll start with everybody could answer on that. We have this two-state formula that people have been talking about. And India has gone up and said that we also support it. But before that, I'd like to, understand that has India's position changed vis-a-vis this whole situation? Because we seem to be standing with the Israeli cause, saying it has a right to defend itself and things like that. Whereas earlier, during the PLO and those times, we had Arafat, and we used to sort of, be friends with both sides. As our position changed, and this two-state formula, given the differences between the Fatah and the, Hamas and all these people, where is it stuck? So if you could just briefly try and...
So what I would say that, I've read at many places and, watched people say that India has maintained a neutral position. I don't agree to that. India has not maintained a neutral position. India has maintained or tried to maintain a position which has been principled in the way it has stood by the issues in the region. Now, the issue that you are saying that there's a perception that India is more pro-Israel. That perception has been built because from 2014-15 onwards, the relations between India and Israel have got very intensified, very close, and the personal rapport between Prime Minister Modi and Netanyahu has been very, very good. So there is a perception that India is pro-Israel, but we should look at only facts. So the first fact is on 7th October when the terror attack of Hamas took place, who was the first world leader to denounce this terror attack? It was India. 3 days later, in the official statement, what did India say? That we stand by the principled stand of a two-state solution. Correct? So there's no third thing. India has said that we need to minimize the casualties and de-escalate the war. Even last Monday when Prime Minister had a talk with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and India has already sent 3 tranches of humanitarian aid for the people in Gaza.
Right.
Okay, so when you look at the whole picture, and last point regarding India is that India has since 2015, when we evacuated our people from Yemen in Operation Rahat, has actually fine-tuned its policy on its own people in the troubled region so well that again this time in October we evacuated almost 10,000 people from Jordan and other places who were stuck in the war zone. So India has also cared about its own people or diaspora who are there in the troubled region, got them out. So if you join all the 4 or 5 pieces that I have said, you will find that India has maintained a very fine balance in this war. It has denounced terror by the terror attack by Hamas, but it has also told Israel that you cannot go on killing innocent civilians, and there needs to be a de-escalation. And it has also said that Israel has the right to respond against any terror attack. So India, to my mind, has maintained a very balanced and principled stand on this war.
Dr. Awwad, do you think India's stand has been even? Have we shifted? What's your sense?
I think it's not the shift. You see, everybody, muck and daldo, you will be more softer. That's how it is business. It is a business. Nobody give you a free lunch, right? So I think that relation has built up over the year with the government, the current government. But when it comes to principle, I fully agree with Colonel. Indian position has been always consistent with the two-state solution. And India was the first non-Arab country to open a Palestinian embassy in Delhi. So that gives you also the image. And remember, Surya, that India is a major stakeholder in the region. India is having the diaspora security, food security, oil security. You have 8 million Indian in the Arab countries. You have in the Gulf country. You have 73 to 75 billion dollars revenue coming annually. You have 14 million Indian going to the Gulf every year. And how will you handle a situation tomorrow if the war break between Iran and Israel? If Israel attack Iranian nuclear site, which for civilian use, and Iran have already voted they will attack Daimuna, where Israel is non-declared nuclear state, the cuddle boy of the appetite 5 permanent nuclear state country that they don't declare Israel as a nuclear state. It's the only state in the region who having nuclear. What will happen to us? We will all die because it is a small geographical area. So you can't take us for granted and take the whole world at ransom because only Netanyahu and his government, right-wing coalition wanted this war. So India understand, and you don't have to be a human, except to be a human, to understand the situation. I mean, look at the killing. I mean, Gaza have exposed the hypocrisy in the world that people are getting killed. So India is also finding itself in a fix because as I said, I need a two-state solution, but nobody wanted the two-state solution. But the war has to continue because Israel did not accomplish the target. So where we stand? So I feel India, and I always advocate on these lines, that India consistently are for two-state solution. No war should be in the region. That is not this era of wars. But again, Ukraine have created another platform for the rest of the world to ensure. The American weathering influence in the West Asia have created another vacuum where Russia, China stepped in. So let's see the situation and West Asia should not be seen in isolation of the global conflict of interest between the superpowers. That's my point. And I think we, as political analysts, I see the trends. And I see the trends in the changing of the world where we are tracking. If tomorrow Israel attack and we go Strait of Hormuz is closed, Red Sea is closed, Mediterranean Sea is closed, 34% of the supply from the State of Hormuz is banned. So you have a global trade on oil. India will shoot down up all the prices, inflation. Then you are having social unrest all over the world. Secondly, you will have global peace and security, where the international community responsibility to make sure, and India is one of the major proactive players, not only to speak to Netanyahu, to speak to every stakeholder in the region, that India is at risk, world peace is at risk, we need a solution. That's my take.
Look, I wanted to ask Kapil this, that, the perception seems to be overall that the Hamas and the Hezbollah, they're basically seen as, more like militant organizations. But is there a possibility, let's say, of a two-state solution in thing? Let's leave out the Hezbollah, let's talk about the Fatah and thing. Do you think without these two parties, there is a possibility of a political situation in the West Bank and Gaza?
I mean, that's the golden question also, right? Because one of the things that keeps coming up when it comes to two-state solution, especially from the Israeli side, is that what kind of state will Palestine be, right? Is it going to be still something, are we going to be fighting across an official border instead of an unofficial border? We have seen sort of tensions between Hamas and Fatah as well prior to this. So, but one thing which is very interesting, and I think needs to be understood because there's a lot of conflation between, Hamas is similar to, let's say, Al-Qaeda, or Al-Qaeda is similar to Hezbollah and all. That's not how these groups work. A lot of these groups have their own political anchoring as well. So while they may actually get gains from, let's say, Iran in front, as far as, let's say, maybe financial support or military support, they do have their own thinking on what they would like to like their political sort of outreach to be, and that may not necessarily align. If you remember, in October last year, Hamas kept on goading Hezbollah to open up, to sort of open the northern front. Hezbollah was very, very hesitant. Hezbollah was also very hesitant, if you see in history, to go out and support Assad in Syria, for example, right? Because they know what their core interest is, what their core capacities are. So when we try to see it as a monolith, yes, from afar, it does look like a monolith. Yes, Iran is supporting all these groups, but even Iran has limitations on what they are going to say or what they will do. So it's very difficult to say, let's say, what kind of polity can be constructed in Palestine. But very quickly, I just want to digress to some the question prior to this, which was on India. The perception is, as even Colonel Saab was saying, that India has sort of supported Israel in this, right? And I think I from a layman's term, I get where it is coming from. It's coming from the fact that India has repeatedly called out Hamas for the terror act that it committed in October. But you have to see that that's India's national interest at play. India has been trying to have this conversation on the international level for 30 years. Without any sort of, without getting much mileage out of it. Now it is seeing some momentum at the UN and other sort of multilateral organization where it is pushing for countering terrorism, considering its border issues with Pakistan and the fact that Pakistan promotes cross-border terrorism. So when it is making it explicit that, we condemn the terror attack committed by Hamas, it is also portraying and putting forward its position on a global stage that, look, we face this as well. It's something that we are in tune with. We get it of how this works. And they want this to be a global conversation. Again, if you remember, countering terrorism is not a global conversation anymore. And India would like it to be at the UN at least, if nothing else. So when it comes off as a perception that India has taken a stance, no, it's just promoting its national interest, which is rooted in its neighborhood. And it's just saying that this has happened and we recognize what has happened at that part of things.
Was it also because the PM tweeted twice, his support for Israel? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
because of this-
I was slightly perplexed with the communications of how they were happening at that point of time. But that definitely added. Maybe not the second one. The first one definitely did because he was the first person, sort of got the first mover message out. So it did seem like it was sudden because everyone, I think, bided some time before they released statements. Now we can discuss whether that was a good decision or a bad decision. But I think the anchoring argument was still what it was. That did not change, right? Just because the message came a bit earlier.
But there also, I think, it comes from personal experience. What happened in Bombay and other places.
Exactly.
That is what triggered that. And to show or to underline the point that you made, that we suffered and we understand what you went through. And, in the backdrop, I mean, why the perception comes is that today we have diplomatic relations with Israel, which we didn't have earlier. We have got a lot of trade with Israel, particularly in defense, etc., which, people look at. So I think all these factors together. But if I can just touch, I mean, I'm not an expert like you, but let me just throw a point that I think if a two-state solution ever comes about, to get to your point, I think one thing people will have to grapple with is whether Hezbollah and Hamas, Hezbollah you can leave out of it somewhere else, but whether Hezbollah and Hamas can be allowed to have a stake or a presence in this new state of Palestine. Because it will come under the thing of mutual security. So can they disarm it? Is it possible? All those questions will also come up when we're discussing a two-state formula.
I think this is a point you are raising, which I can add to it one thing, that Hamas and Hezbollah are ideology. They have been involved in every political aspect of the region. Hamas won a democratically elected election. Hezbollah is part in the government, never took part in any sectarian fighting in the civil war in Lebanon. It was only created for this. So my understanding is, as long as Israel exists, Hamas and Hezbollah will exist. That is the equation. So how you wanted them to be they will be liquidated. If there is a state solution, maybe you say, I don't want from Euphrates to Nile, I wanted the state Israel, speaking of a greater Israel, the same like they are saying. There is no Israel. They are saying Israel is from the Arab Euphrates, from the river to the river, from Sinai Peninsula to Euphrates, to Iraq, which include Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, Sinai Peninsula, and 1/3 of Israel, of Saudi Arabia. This is their map, and they are talking the mixture of religion, fanatics, with might is a deadly mixture in the region. And there, when you are already faked the Torah and the old statesmen to satisfy those people who are going to colonize the region. I was just taking a picture from New York Times, which is you will be shocked to know that it is a 28th, here it is a 20th June 1899. And what is written there? Will colonize Palestine. This is the Jewish lobby in the United States. And if this is the situation, I mean, how to explain to the people, this is not a conspiracy theory, but I don't believe anything coincidence in the Arab world as well. This is all pre-planned. That's where we are. So I think this is the most important part is, once you have a peace, everybody has to come. Make peace as a strategic option. Then we can solve the problem. If you don't, then you will continue the war. And it will come to existential war, either we or you. That's it. There's no other way.
I hate interrupting you, and this is such an interesting conversation. We could have gone on for a longer time, but we're running out of time. So if you could just take a very quick question for all of you, if you could just put in 1 minute. Given India's sort of deep interests in both, with the station countries and with Israel, should or can it get involved as a facilitator or a mediator or something like it has offered to do in the case of Ukraine? So would you like to start?
I may be an outlier here a bit, but I think one of the reasons why India has a successful West Asia policy is the fact that it does not get into that. I know India has that there is, even the Iranian ambassador was yesterday saying that Israel has India's ear, maybe India should tell them to de-escalate and all. And I'm sure there are some channels at some point of time where India has quietly done that as well. But mediation is a very formalized intervention, right? You need to have that political clout region-wise to mobilize around. And I think, unfortunately or fortunately, only the US has that at this point of time, and their diplomacy is failing. So I don't think India should or can get into that on a formalized structure at least.
I tend to agree. I think the time is not right. That would be our calculation. Things have to start moving. As you rightly said, we don't have America's political clout. We don't have their military might. But I'm certain almost that back channels are working. And they're trying to see, where there is any common ground to try and get things going. But I don't think we'll take the risk of trying to mediate. Because we also don't want to be seen as siding with one side or the other, which is a danger when you try all this.
I think India is definitely involved, deep-rooted its own politics and from its own strategic, sovereign, independent foreign policy in this region. And the reason I'm saying this because India does not want even anybody to interfere when it comes to settling issues with neighboring countries. So there is no mediation. But India is supporting a peaceful solution. I'm not sure that India will ever even gamble or bet on a losing horse. The crux of the problem is this fighting that Netanyahu telling to the American there is no, before the election, no negotiation with Hamas. The war will continue. No exchange of prisoners, and I'm expanding the war. That's the message given. So I think the goal, the ball is in the American court, and it is Netanyahu and the coming American president who can settle the issue. No one else. America will not allow. American military industry is built on a war and finding more zone in the war to find war. Whether it is in Russia, Ukraine, it's Europe tomorrow, it's fine. The Americans selling out to the German and to the rest of them oil and gas, fine. If it comes to West Asia, Middle East, it's also Africa, the same. And now watch Asia Pacific.
Indo-Pacific.
That's what they named it.
I agree. And there's two things that we have to remember. Firstly, India is the most trusted partner in the region across both the parties. Secondly, like he said, India's foreign policy has very clear underlying principle of not getting involved in any intra-regional issues. So it is an intra-regional issue of West Asia. India, by its foreign policy principle, cannot get involved in it. And third is, India is the only country, major power, including US, Russia, China, Egypt, Turkey, whatever, which has no vested interest in the war. US has seen, when it's US does diplomacy to get a ceasefire, it is seen to be siding Israel. Qatar and Egypt and Turkey are seen to be siding with the Palestinian cause. India is talking to all people because India is the only partner which is not seen on either of the side. It is seen absolutely neutral and objective. So I don't say that India is going to mediate or become the peacemaker, but back channel, whatever other methods, things are moving, people are talking, but it has to be sorted out by themselves. India cannot be sorting out their problem sitting across 700 miles away from Oman.
That's an interesting point to make. And with that, I'm afraid we must close this particular thing. I really would like to sort of thank all of you very much for coming here. And, in fact, I suspect that each one of you will probably come in later to put out a certain perspective on this. Thank you so very much. With that, we must come to a close for this roundtable. I do hope you enjoyed this particular episode of the roundtable and look forward to having you with us again. Till then, this is Ramananda Sengupta signing out.